The show where anything goes. Motivation, mindset, recovery, philosophy, and life. We become who we are through what we experience. We all have a story, and this is My Backstory with Josh Boyer.
What's up, everyone? Here we are on the My Backstory podcast, episode number 18. I'm actually here on Fort Bragg in North Carolina with War Hogg from War Hogg Tactical. So it's kind of funny. I came out here to do a podcast with Pat McNamara, and my buddy Phoenix came along, and he's like, "Hey, there's a guy that you should interview, man. War Hogg. He's out there in North Carolina." I was like, "Actually, I've never met Rick, so yeah, I'd love to meet him." So we had dinner last night, and I was like, "Hey, you want to do a podcast?" He's like, "Yeah, let's do it." So that's the great thing about this podcasting and social media. You link up with people that you've probably never met before and strike up a conversation. It's like, yeah, this is really cool, you know? So I'm interested to hear your backstory. I mean, I know you're in the Army. That's about all I really know. And I kind of like it that way because now I'm going to learn some things about you and then, ask you some questions along the way. So Rick, why don't you take it away, man? Share your backstory, where you grew up and kind of how you got into the Army and what you're doing now. And go ahead, man.
All right. And hey, brother, appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure.
So, I was born in Massachusetts, grew up in New Hampshire.
Okay.
Out of a separated family.
Huh.
You don't realize it as a kid, but I had great parents.
Huh.
So it kind of drew from each one of those. So when you kind of fast forward a little bit today, I think my entrepreneurial spirit comes from my dad.
Yeah.
He was very much, had his own businesses as I was growing up. He was also a Marine Corps Vietnam vet.
Nice.
So they kind of have that military lineage in the family. My grandfather was a World War II vet as well. So we kind of have that.
It's in the blood.
It's in the blood, brother,
For sure.
My mom she was kind of the one that got me, if you want to say, in the fitness side. So I remember playing baseball and stuff as a kid, but really she was the one that drugged me down the gym, you know. And back in those days, there was no YouTube, there was no nothing. So maybe you grab a copy of Muscle and Fitness and go, all right, let me look at some pictures, and you figure out your workout. So I think I was very fortunate, that the time frame that I grew up with, there was a lot of figuring things out. You kind of get your parents as mentors, but you really don't realize it at the time. They're more of a pain. But as you figure stuff out along the way, I think it helps kind of build you. Fast forward kind of junior high, I get kind of introduced to wrestling. I was like, man, I'm digging this stuff.
Hey, wrestling's legit, man. I love it.
It gets legit once you roll into high school.
Right.
And really, it was my high school coach. I give him a lot of credit because we probably didn't learn any moves. I can remember my freshman year, probably 2 or 3 weeks into the season, he just conditioned the shit out of us.
Right.
And I think a lot of that, when you start looking back, it's like, yeah, man, that showing up to practice every day, just getting your ass kicked.
Yep.
But then coming back the next day because he purposely did it. And you don't realize it at the time. You get all these guys out on the mat. Next, you show up the next day, couple less, till he knew what his magic formula was. And you're like, all right, this is pretty much the team because they've stuck it out.
Yeah, it's crazy how those coaches, like I have a football coach that I had in high school that when I was going through boot camp and tech school and all my military stuff, because of him, like I felt like he had built a foundation. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like, there's nothing you guys can do to me that my coach hasn't already done.
Yep.
And it builds, character and discipline and strength and courage and all these other things that you don't realize it at the time.
No.
But then when you start going through things that are a little bit harder, you're like, I got this. I'm good, because the foundation's already been built,
Yeah. And especially, on the wrestling side, because there's discipline that's got to go in there, especially, trying to jockey weight class and stuff like that. And wrestlers do some stupid things.
Oh, for sure. Spit bottles.
Let me put trash bags on. So, I can remember if you were high speed, you bought one of those sauna suits, right?
Yeah.
But, for the low rent kids, I'm going to throw some trash bags on and just run around and cause myself to basically dehydrate.
Right.
And you don't realize what you're doing, but all right, I see the scale at my point. Yep, I'm good. And then pretty much binge eat because once you weighed in, I had this huge kind of brown, bag that was just filled with all kinds of crap. Yeah. Throw it down your neck and it's like, all right, made weight. Yep, you're good. Suck all this stuff down, get the match over. And then it's like repeat all over again. So
I wrestled heavier because I didn't want to cut weight. Mm-hmm. And that was good on JV, when I was a freshman. That was fine.
Yep.
The minute you get up to varsity in the big leagues, it's like a completely different ball game. So I was like, I'm going to wrestle. I think I was like 150 something, whatever. And I wrestled 171s. Mm-hmm. and I was killing people in JV. It's totally good. It did not carry over onto varsity. That's for sure. So I had to learn a hard lesson, but whatever.
Well, I mean, it's one of those you take, because I was kind of the same way. Because as you progressed over the years, it's like, if you want to say those, initial practice stages or weeding out became easier and easier.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's one of those, hey, coach goes, hey, you mind bumping up a weight class? I particularly don't, because you got an advantage kind of where you're at. But at the same token, yeah, I will, because now I can eat, and I don't, you didn't have that such strict discipline of starving yourself or dehydrating yourself. So
there's a lot of people that think wrestling is like where it's at, as far as the discipline's concerned. Mm-hmm. A lot of people talk about it because there is so much the weight discipline, the practicing discipline. I mean, everything about wrestling, it's hard, it's hard on your body, and it's hard, but it definitely forges your mindset for sure.
By far. That is, and you don't realize it when you're doing it. So as a kid, I don't understand it, but when you look back and get a little wiser, you can go, yeah, that was a big, those 4 years of high school. Because like I said, the junior high stuff, you're just out there rolling to roll, and it's not the same. Once you get to that high school level, that's really when the push comes and coaches on you, and you really start forming that discipline and that mental toughness just to do the stuff you got to do.
I think that's why you guys on the East Coast, just my opinion, I think California people are going to be pissed at me for saying this, but it's true. People from Texas all the way east are just tougher people. Mm-hmm. And I think that is because you start sports in junior high school. Mm-hmm. So I was pretty much a California kid my whole life, but I moved to Texas for a portion of my childhood, and you start football out there, tackle football and other sports. You start in junior high. Yeah. So you're trying out for it. So there's an A team, a B team, a C team, an intramural team. And, so you're learning stuff, and their system that they're teaching you in junior high is going to carry over most likely into high school, because the coaches obviously are talking and this and that. But in California, it's not that way. So you have sports that you play with the city, like Pop Warner or AYSO and this and that. There's club teams you can play for too. There's really no sports though in junior high in California, and maybe in different parts of California there are, but in Southern California there definitely was not. So it's like, if you play Pop Warner, you do, but a lot of guys, they're starting sports like in high school. When you get to high school, that's where the real sports actually start. So I think it gives you guys a leg up on the competition because you start earlier.
Yeah. Well, like I said, it was one of those that was a good, looking back, a good base for me. Yeah. Somewhere along in there, I knew I wanted to join the military. Yeah. So I don't really want to say there was a conflict, my dad being Marine, but me wanting to go into the Army, and I specifically knew, I wanted to join Special Forces. Yeah. Was it John Wayne and the Green Berets? Was it Rambo? Was it whatever, a culmination thereof? I knew a lot about them. Fort Devens was down in Mass. I've made a trip down there just to go, hey, check this out. Does a, teenage kid really know what he's looking at? Nope. But it was just the nostalgia of these guys. And it's like, hey, that's where I want to aspire to be someday.
Nice.
So I remember talking to a recruiter, like around 16, trying to figure out all this stuff out. At that time, the current, for lack of better terms, SF Baby program that's going on today was actually still around. So I was like, cool, man, I can go right from high school, become a Green Beret, and all's good.
Yeah. So you take the assessment test before you even go to boot camp or what? Or
I don't know how they did it back then, to be honest with you. Yeah. I'm going, golly, 32 plus years, trying to remember what some recruiter said. Right. It's similar to today. So you can have a guy that can sign up basically as an 18 X-ray.
Oh, okay.
Or the SF Baby.
Oh, so you come in with a guaranteed contract?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That you're at least be given a chance to go to the school. Doesn't mean you're going to become one, but you're at least given the opportunity.
Cool.
So that was still going on, like I said, in the 80s. Long story short, I couldn't do delayed entry till I was 17.
Right.
So go back there, the recruiter, yep, hey, buddy, here I am, ready to sign my SF. Well, the Army changed it. All right. So he's like, hey, next best thing. So I want to jump out of planes. Yep. Do the airborne infantry thing. Sure, sounds good. Right. So pretty much, I think like 10 days after high school, rode down to Fort Benning, Georgia, which was a culture change coming from New Hampshire down to, Georgia in the summertime. And here we go. Intro to Uncle Sugar's, fun farm. Get done, basic AIT, jump school, and boom, next thing you know, you go into Fort Bragg, North Carolina, 82nd Airborne. Okay.
Nice.
So backstory, I get here in 88.
Yeah.
And I've never left Fort Bragg. So I've changed different organizations on Fort Bragg, but technically I've never left.
So you never got stationed at any other bases or anything?
No. because
that's not the norm, right?
It's not the norm. But when it ends up happening is, you think about Bragg, right? So drive in, you see the sign, home of the Airborne Special Operations. So if I would have stayed in the 82nd, I probably would have went to Korea, somewhere else, and came back and kind of done that vicious cycle that so many guys you hear about do. Right. Once you go into the special operations community, I mean, this is it. So where I was a 7th grouper, it was right here at Bragg. So typically it's, hey, you go from 7th, do your stint in SWIC, back to 7th group, or sometimes guys can swap. I remember on my team, we ended up getting a guy, I think he was from 10th group. So that was kind of the SWIC point, was, hey, if you wanted to change, but a lot of guys didn't. They just went back to where they were. So, but really coming to the 82nd, was a good thing. I had some, good and bad leaders, but I had a squad leader. He really instilled some super info in me. And he's like, hey man, check it out. He's like, when you're looking at leaders, take the good, stick it in one pocket, take the bad and stick it in the other. And he's like, remember which pocket you want to reach out of. You always want to pull from the good, but remember the bad. So if a guy's doing something leadership style that's being a jerk or an ass, why repeat it? Why do it? You don't like it, that's not your style, but don't forget it and don't repeat it. And that was kind of one of those, words of wisdom,
for sure,
that kind of, makes perfect sense. And especially, you don't grasp everything, young 18, 19-year-old kid, no. But you start looking back at it all, all these different people are kind of molding you into the person you are. Fast forward, here we go. Desert Storm kicks off. I think I was 20 years old or whatever, rolling to combat, the big, kind of the whole blowout thing, and, experience that. And you find out that, man, that thing, the Army didn't have the legs, between the Army and the Air Force to get bodies over there, sitting down at Green Ramp for I forget how many days, just trying to get out.
Yeah.
But, it was a good experience. I remember leaving Iraq in 91 going, yep, I'm never coming back to this place.
So you thought.
Joke was on this guy.
Right.
So during that time, you find out that, especially being here at Bragg, you see the SF guys and grass is a lot greener over there. It's like, I got to do something to get out of here. Yeah. But luckily coming back, from Desert Storm, there was everything kind of shut down. You got to think the Army, Fort Bragg, as far as the stores out there, almost went under. Things were decimated because all the guys were overseas. Yeah. So come back and go, hey man, you can go to Ranger School without doing pre-Ranger. I said, sign me up. Why suffer before we go?
Right.
So, rolled down there, knocked out Ranger School, come back. So you got to think of the time, come back from there. And one part I didn't add, so again, with that squad leader I was talking about, he was also kind of the guy that got me, gave me good tips how to get the EIB. So I get that thing as, a PFC, one of 9 in the battalion. I think there was like 30 something of us within the brigade. So it's almost like early on, you're kind of getting that good, kick in the ass going, yeah, man, this thing's, I like this stuff. Here we go,
Yeah.
But, you come back, from Ranger School, Tab D4, everyone knows it's been in the Army, the Spec 4 Mafia, and you're out there running stuff,
So you're scrolled or you're tabbed? Is that
tabbed?
So scrolled is you have to be part of the 7th to be scrolled?
Yeah,
or what? Okay.
Yep. So I'm Ranger qualified,
right.
So there's that big argument. Are you a Ranger? I just say I'm Ranger qualified,
right.
Yeah. So
is 7th here on Bragg too?
No.
Okay, I don't know much about it.
No, so they're down at Savannah, at Benning, and then up in Washington.
Got it.
So, so we get Ranger School done, get everything hooked up, wind up going to SFAS, and I get my years right. I think that was 92, because I did Ranger School in 91. The difference was back then, there was a super delay. Like I had a year delay from completing SFAS till I could go to the Q course.
Oh, wow.
What winds up happening is you come back to the 82nd and you're automatically thought of as a ship jumper, everything else. So you can tell I can go to the company OML list and, order of merit, different schools, stuff like that. And I know exactly where I'm at because there's a black line. Right. And they black lined out everything. And I remember being, back at the time, in order to go to Jump Master School, you had to do the Jump Master pre-test, get this little card from the Jump Master Committee, yada, yada. Yeah. I'm like the only guy that has one. And they, you know, will not send me to jump master school because you're quote unquote shit jumping. And I'm like, I'm still in the Army. You know,
so they're not encouraging you to like better yourself.
No, it's frowned upon.
That's crazy.
Because you're leaving.
Right.
You know, it's like, well, why would we give you a slot? We give it to somebody else. Well, nobody else even has, because back then you had to have that jump master pretest to even go to the school.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm the only guy that's got it. No, we'll give it to somebody else. I'm like, all right, man, you know. So you leave out of there with a lot of bitterness, and it's like, come on, guys, why can't you take care of people? So it's just that mentality.
You're not the first person to tell me that either, which is interesting to me, because it's like, you'd think like leaders would encourage that. It's like I mean, I get the manpower part of it. You know what I mean? You're losing a guy and, you know, you're losing a skill set. You're losing a leadership style. You're losing a lot of things by, you know, giving it up to FSAS. But it's, hey, you know what I mean? That I would encourage that as a leader. You know what I mean?
But you're still in the Army. That's the whole point. And it's like, it's, at least for the 82nd, it was very much, you know, you're jumping ship. So
yeah,
that's all right.
bad.
You know, you kind of don't look back and roll on and, you know, end up doing, you know, going to the Q course for, you know, being 18 Bravo, be a weapons sergeant, and worked it out. Was able to get over 7th group, which is where I wanted to go to. You know, and again, it was one of those that, you know, these leaders along the way. You know, I had phenomenal team sergeant. You know, my first team. You know, same thing with our Fox in the team. You know, and it's just real good mentors, and you're like, yeah, man, you kind of want to emulate these guys and go, hey, this is the way I want to do business. You know, fast forward, I really say I've been privileged as far as the stuff I've done in the military, you know, as far as the opportunities I was given. Yeah. So ended up, you know, specific team I was on, you know, we had a 1-year kind of mission training some guys, you know, really gave a good, at least for me, a good skill set, you know, one, teaching that, you know, marksmanship, CQB stuff. And then fast forward, you know, I'm able to go to, you know, Sephardic, which is kind of the 8-week, you know, Special Forces CQB course. You know, I wind up coming out of there as a distinguished honor grad, you know, it's like, and that was my goal going in there. It's like, I want to walk out of this thing being the top dog. You know, that ends up working cool. So this is probably 98, 99. The SF community decides they're going to start the Special Forces Advanced Urban Combat course. So they want to take some of this CQB burden off of the schoolhouse and pass it down to the groups and say, hey, man, you guys teach Indige. Why can't you teach yourself? So again, being very fortunate, 7th group, our group commander took it super serious. You know, he handpicked a team sergeant and said, hey, Joe, you got run, pick whoever you want in the group. I support it. And, you know, luckily Joe reached out to me, picked me up as one of the guys to go out there, and, you know, ended up, you know, we get range 65 and it's kind of like our range, and we're out there, got our POI and we're out training, and I got super guys on that team. One of the guys that was actually on my team, Tim Burke, I wind up linking up with him. So you got to think we kind of go a while there once we separated, because I end up leaving the SWAG committee, go to SWIC, kind of separate ways, but I end up linking up with Tim, and this is way fast forward, last year up here in North Carolina. So he's doing something called the Tactical Games.
Oh, nice.
So Tim's combined kind of a CrossFit shooting competition into one deal. Cool. So it was cool, and we'll come back to that one, but it was just, that's kind of, you know, the people that you bump into along the road. Yeah.
Do you lose deployability when you go into a training slot like that?
So technically we weren't within the group. We didn't do our JSITs like the normal guys did, but we were still in ODA. Okay. So
what does that mean for the listeners? Because there's some people that aren't.
So an ODA is an Operational Detachment Alpha. So when you kind of look in the grand scheme of how Special Forces is broken down, you know, Alpha is kind of 12-man team. You know, so if you've seen the Green Berets or stuff like that, you know, unlike the A team that's on with the old BA Baracus back in the day, it's not a 4-man team. Right. You don't have a helicopter pilot, but, you know, 12-man team, you know, between weapons, engineer, medical, and communications. You got, you know, intel, you got your team sergeant, and you just got your 2 officers in there. So that comprises your 12 guys. In essence, they could split into 2 6-man teams, still be functional and train guys, and still have all the elements there needed to do what they have to do. Yeah. So, it wasn't really, so you got to think at that point, the GWAT hadn't kicked off yet.
Right.
So I remember I was on Bragg in my, Survival team room, September 11th. And, it's like, wow, what's going on? Yeah. So first you think, who's the jackass pilot that totally missed that building?
Right.
But then when the second one happens, it's like, all right, man.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. So it's weird because really we're the only guys that have easy access to guns and ammo.
Right.
And next thing you know, it's like our team starts, kind of poshing right there at the 7th Group headquarters. Hey, what are we doing? And everyone's trying to figure out, because there's really no force protection measures at the time. Bragg's an open post. No such thing as all these gates and everything else like they have now. So it's trying to go out there and figure out, hey, how are we going to secure this thing? Because we don't know, what's coming up next. Yeah. Long story short, all that shakes out. I probably lucked out because I ended up somehow doing the night shift. So I remember leaving post September 12th, and the row of cars trying to get on a post, because now we try to establish, checkpoints and how we're going to check IDs and just figuring out as you go. And I remember driving home going, wow. So for the guys that know Bragg around the Fort Bragg area, I mean, there was probably, from the Riley Road gate, because that's where we used to go out to, all the way back past Cliffdale Road, which has got to be, I don't know, probably close to 5 miles or so, traffic backed up.
Yep.
And it's like people checking IDs. What do you do with the guy that doesn't? It's just crazy.
Yeah, it was nuts. It's the same thing. I was in England when it kicked off. So I was already in the military, and then September 11th happened while I was in England. And you went from force protection level Bravo to Delta in a matter of minutes.
Yeah.
And yeah, same thing. Like the traffic was insane trying to get on base. All the civilians are kicked off base. Mm-hmm. Everything's blacked out. Trash bags over every sign. So if you're not from that base, you have no clue where you are.
Yep.
They're searching every single vehicle.
Yeah.
Mirrors, dogs, everything. And it was intense. You know what I mean? And it's crazy the cool thing about that for me was like seeing, you get to witness firsthand some awesome leadership, because that takes some coordination. It takes great communication skills, and everything else to make it happen where it's seamless. And it really did feel like a seamless, like well-oiled machine, the way that it all went down.
Yeah.
It went from being a pretty lax base, you know what I mean? It was a refueling base, and not too much is going on there, protesters every once in a while. It's all of a sudden like it's turning high speed, like fast and in a hurry. And so it's cool to watch, like to be a part of that. And same thing, you're working. I worked, I don't remember how many days straight, but it was insane though. It was a nutty couple weeks for sure after.
Absolutely. And then trying to get all that stuff figured out. And
right.
I don't recollect, like I said, I remember being in the team room. I don't remember if we had, obviously we can have class going on or whatever, because we would have been out in the range, but I don't know how that affected the gap or whatever. But you sit there and shortly thereafter, we're sending guys overseas.
Yeah.
And so here it is, some of your students end up coming back. And this is where probably one of the best rewards I've ever had out of the military. When your peers come back and say, hey man, that stuff you taught me saved my life.
Yeah.
It's a big deal.
Oh, fuck.
So, and that was kind of, a big driving factor for me. It's like, wow, so you kind of solidified, all the stuff we've been teaching out, these guys, they go out there, actually do it. And you're like, wow, man, come back. And that's huge, man.
Yeah.
So
talk about purpose.
Yeah. So I wind up having to come down on orders for SWCC, which is basically the schoolhouse. So wind up going out to SFAS, so Special Forces Selection Assessment, having to do that.
Yeah.
And it's a grind. I mean, I think it was 28 days. It's like Groundhog Day, same thing. Yep. Getting guys through. Wind up being able to get out of there. And then next, back in the hopper, 05, I think it was '05, wound up being, my first deployment over to Iraq. Thinking to myself, back in 91, never coming back here. Yep, here we go.
Yep.
End up spending, from '05, it was funny because I wind up back in Iraq on the 25th anniversary of Desert Storm.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, wow, didn't see this one coming. But the thing is, you don't understand, I guess, kind of all what goes on. So it's easy for the service member, to serve.
Yeah.
But really, it's the burden on the family.
Oh, yeah.
So I think it was 2011. So you got to think we've been going,
10 years.
I've been going for a while.
Yeah.
Pretty much, you're in and out of there at least once a year, if not twice a year. Just depending on the rotation schedule. And my wife goes, she's like, you don't get it. And I'm like, get what? And she's like, every time the phone rings, I check my email, knock at the door.
Huh.
I think the worst. And I'm like, you're right, I didn't. Because what ended up happening was I had a good friend of mine killed in '05. So Joe was killed Christmas Eve 2005. The thing with Joe, he was the Christmas cake thief that I didn't find out literally till like hours before he was killed. So I'd always find these Christmas cakes sitting in my stuff. I think the first one was on my pillow in my bed. I find one in my boot, in my kit. Like, where the hell are these Christmas cakes coming from? Now, to put it in perspective, back in '05, they were packaged two to a package. Right. Joe would steal one, but he would only eat one. And then he would leave me one sitting somewhere. Right. I kept going, who the hell is doing this, And literally, I caught him, Christmas Eve. And it's like, there he is, hand in the basket, get ready to, put that thing, I think he was getting ready to stick it in my bed, What are you doing? He's like, whoa, caught him red-handed. Right. So, of course, I'm going to arrest the great, Baghdad Christmas cake thief. And Joe was ended up, he got killed that night. What you don't realize is, type A guys, all driven, your mind is a super powerful tool, and it winds up inadvertently putting self-protection measures in there, I guess, for lack of better terms. Yeah. So we had a couple of guys killed before, I didn't know them that well, but, Joe was the one that hit, he was the one I knew the best, it was, so when it hit, you don't realize, it's not like there's a period of time, I don't recollect, kind of the 25th to the 27th is kind of some gray periods. I remember the memorial service, but I don't remember a whole bunch. I got guys saying, hey, you remember the service? I'm like, or I think we did a chapel service. I don't remember that. But looking back, your brain kind of goes into self-defense mechanism. So yeah, you've got friends, people, but you're not really making the effort to really harness those relationships. Why? Because they could be gone tomorrow and you don't realize it.
Yeah.
But it's kind of one of those
subconsciously you're like keeping people at a distance because
exactly. Exactly.
Is that something they teach you like in training? No. I mean, if you don't mind talking about it, it's one of those things where I think I'm not from the special operations community, so understanding from somebody like you, is that something they're teaching you in training as far as like, hey, listen, you're going to lose some of these people next to you, and knowing how to like compartmentalize?
Yeah, but see, compartmentalize is a bad thing. So you don't realize it. And again, it wasn't until, the TBIs really kicked in. I don't want to say TBIs because you get repeated, but we'll get to the compartmentalization part, but you're not taught it. I think you naturally just do it. It's not really addressed. So you just you have all these things. If you think about it, your brain's a box. There's only so many things you can jam in the box before you're going to lose some type of bandwidth on something. I think the fortunate thing with us is, we build a very good foundation in our skill set, and that can kind of drive you through a lot of things. So you sit there and go, hey, how are these guys so successful? And you look at the majority of the community's got some type of brain injury because you've got such a foundation laid, in your training that you almost kind of power through, for lack of better terms, and you got that kind of mental toughness that you deal with stuff. So, you don't, that was kind of, a big one, losing him. And I don't want to say you're standoffish. I mean, you still talk to people, but it's like, you're not making the extra effort. Hey, we're back home. Are we really getting together as families? Well, maybe not, but you're not really trying to harness anything. And I think you don't realize it at the time. And really it's one of those that there's probably some lost opportunities just because you don't subconsciously, you're trying to divide that stuff. So kind of fast forward, it's either, 2011 or 2012, my dad, so again, he's, Vietnam combat vet, winds up, and again, it goes back to the whole family thing, so at that time, mom was like, you don't get it when you're gone. And you're not computing because you're out doing your thing. Yeah. You're out running with you guys, and that's kind of your mission set or your focus, because it's like, hey, in my mind, if I can keep the fight there and they're not coming here, I'm doing my job to protect my family. So dad makes an 8-hour drive. So at the time, he's down in Florida as a snowbird, drives up just to have dinner with me before I leave, and then turns around and drives 8 hours back home. Yeah. And it doesn't compute till later on. And you're like, wow. He would never say it. So he wasn't, as boisterous as kind of my wife was. And really she held on a long time before she even said anything to me. But just that kind of worry in the background. Because then you don't realize all that stuff till your kids are starting to walk out the door, and you're like, it all comes.
I get it now.
It all comes full circle.
Yeah.
So it totally makes sense. So up until that point, I'm doing pretty. I'm a lucky guy. I'm fairly healthy, not too busted up. End up in 2012, falling out of a helicopter, about 30 feet. And I never admitted I was knocked out until I was inpatient at the hospital in 2016. Unaccounted time. What the hell is unaccounted time? It's a way that you lie to yourself that goes, nope, I wasn't knocked out. My hand was all jacked up. My hand, basically my left hand, didn't work. That was really more my concern. I didn't realize it at the time, but you have that classic concussion amnesia. I don't remember falling out of the helo, next thing you know, it's above me. Tail rotor's flapping around. It's like, really, I'm going to die tonight from a freaking tail rotor. Dust yourself off. Left hand doesn't work. Great. I got no mag, trying to reload with my right hand, get my gun working again. But then that whole kind of assault process is all It's all spotty. It's that classic, concussion amnesia. And I think that was, everyone talks TBI in a singular, and it's really not. So guys are basically getting self-induced TBIs from just, you think about all the explosive breaching we're doing, different weapon systems we're using. Guys are getting their heads rocked. And I think that was kind of that was a knock that kind of busted me all up. Now you're back and neck's all jacked up, and then slowly thereafter, you start, and it took a while, but I remember finally getting to a point where it's like you're showing up to work almost in that punch drunk stage where you're there, but you're not. Yeah. Hey, things start slowly. And where'd I park the car at? Read an email, you got a meeting in a half hour, and forget. One of the guys ask, hey, we going to this meeting? Of course we are. Where's it at? Because I don't know. And it's a punch drunk's really the only way I can kind of say it's like you're there, but you're not there. And I think you can function. Again, I think it all boils down to, the level of training that you're at, but you're really not. Your mind's not processing stuff. You notice in my case, marksmanship falling off a little bit. Well, come to find out, now you've got an eye convergence issue. So as part of this TBI, your eyes aren't working as best as they should. And really that was kind of at the point where I think the Army and the DOD started going, yeah, man, we're having, TBI issues. How do we address it? And how do we get guys? So you look at a community, you put a lot of money into these guys, but it's almost like that one spot nobody's really looking at. Yeah. How do we fix these guys? So yep, strength coach, physical therapist, all that stuff. So you're looking to get my structure right, but it does you no good if your brain's all jacked up.
Yeah. I'd never even heard about TBIs until 2013 or 14. Mm-hmm. Someone said TBI, and I was like, the fuck is a TBI?
Yeah.
It's a traumatic brain injury. And so I started looking it up and like Googling it, asking Uncle Google what it meant. Mm-hmm. And it's crazy. There's so many things that it's probably been around forever, but the science just wasn't there to support it. Well, so how many guys were suffering from this like for years without anybody even knowing what the hell was wrong with them,
So the problem is between, and I hate TBI because of traumatic brain injury. It's not injury, it's injuries. Right. So, it's like, again, when I was down at the hospital, it's like, how many exposure have you had? I don't know, hundreds, thousands, because they can't comprehend what you're doing. So you got to think back in the 90s, Green Berets breaching. Hey man, I'm going to be right up there next to it. Why? You don't realize you think you're being quicker, but in turn you're self-inducing a brain injury. And is that initial one going to do anything? Probably not. Is the next one? Nope. But it's a concurring effect, and really that's what's going on. Now, granted, you got guys, yep, they get a good whack to the head, and yeah. So was me being knocked unconscious kind of that final one that threw it over? I think it definitely had a lot to do with me getting busted up physically, and kind of that final one of, hey, you got that brain whacked that one last time. But you look at it, and the problem is when it comes to either the military or the VA, when you look at PTSD and TBI, the signs and symptoms run parallel, hand in hand. And I think you have guys being misdiagnosed probably both ways, depending on the treatment facility, doctor, stuff like that. And they don't take it at the individual level. And unfortunately, PTSD is pushed, and I think it's pushed in kind of a bad light, because it's almost like they want you to have it. Oh, you got to have PTSD. You saw all this stuff. Well, yeah, I did. But you know what? I'm more affected from kind of things that happen with my family and losing friends. It's not what I saw on the battlefield, but they're gonna go boom. This is, kind of the
They want to put a label on everything.
They want to slap a label on everything, on everything.
Sure. Yeah.
You know,
especially stuff they don't understand. You know, if they can't understand, it's like, oh, that sounds like PTSD. We'll call it that.
But and God forbid you're hypervigilant, because if you're hypervigilant, you definitely have PTSD. So I guess, whether it's, it was mainly, you hear that from the VA guys. I don't remember so much from the military doctors, but if that's the case, I guess when you look at professional athletes, football, soccer, pick your poison, I don't care, pretty hypervigilant reading the play. So if a guy gets an interception because he read the play and took it, does he have PTSD? Probably got TBI, or he's collecting his stacks of TBIs. But it's just, quit labeling stuff. Look at a guy for who he is, and a lot of those people don't understand the special operations community. So we're vigilant people. We look around them. It's what we do. But it's that, like you said, it's that constant label. But the one good thing, it's I kind of go back to the, the pain and suffering on the family. It's like, my daughter kept going, you've missed 9 of my birthdays. And this is her as an 18-year-old.
Okay.
And you don't think it has an impact as a dad? Yeah, it does. So, it was funny because one of the docs, probably the best advice I got was, we ended up, for her 18th birthday, we had 9 additional mini parties.
It's a good idea, man.
Well, and really part of it is trying to, give guys strategies out there. And for us, it worked for us. So it was, a healing process for kind of both of us. We went back, here's me and my wife going, yeah, you're going 05, 06, 07. Oh, yeah, I mean, it's just, all right, what birthday was that? And we're figuring all this stuff out and go, yep. So here it is, prior to her 18th birthday, and we're having, here's a card. And I remember writing, each one had a special note in there. Yeah. And that was really, for our relationship, that was kind of a nice closure to some pain, I guess, if you want to say. Yeah. So any listeners out there, hey, if you're in the same boat, by all means, and like I said, anything I say, if you can incorporate it and help things out, by all means.
Do you think it was, do you think she understands, or do you think she resented you for being gone? Or do you think she understood that, like, hey, this is my job?
I think it was twofold. Because why does a kid tell you? How does she know the number? So there's got to be, I don't want to say it was resentment, but there was something specific to me. I was missing her birthday, and it was just the way things fell. Right. Our relationship is great now. Yeah. I won't say it was rocky before, but it was just, let's just call it a pain point. So it, here I am, as a father, self-inflicting pain into my child. Yeah. For doing something that, in my mind, is right, because in essence, I'm trying to protect them. Yeah. So, I think we cleaned all that stuff up. That's all good, but it was just one of those, it hasn't come up since. Yeah. So we were able to rectify, and put some closure, kind of to both points on that.
Would you do it all over again? And the reason I ask you that is because I know there's listeners are going to listen to this, and there's guys that are younger than you that are probably just joining or are part of the same community. And it's funny because I keep hearing the same message over and over, that if there was one regret that people had, it would be putting, big brother over their family, or choosing their job over their family. It seems like that's like the theme,
It is, because there were times that I should have went home. There was a time that mama, she had some drama, and it's like I'm bullshitting both sides. Chain of command's like, yeah, you can go.
Yeah.
And I'm telling her, yeah, it's not looking good. Because, and this is just me, and I look back, does it have to do, losing Joe? And subconsciously, you don't want that. Hey, if I'm not there, I can't help. So to sit there and go, would I do it all over again? You know what? Unfortunately, yeah, I would. Because it's one of those that you don't, unless you've been there, unless you've done that, you don't understand it. Yep. And I'll give you a prime example. Like even with my wife. So I ended up, I got my retired work dog at the house, and she's like, you look at that dog all crazy. Yeah, because we got a certain bond. Just like me and my wife have a certain bond, me and my kids have a certain bond.
Yeah.
The dog is part of me because he was my partner in combat.
Yeah.
So to say, would I do it all over again? Yeah. Because you do it for your brothers. Yep. And even for that little four-legged beast, I'm the guy that's his advocate, because he'll run into fire. He don't care.
Yeah.
He doesn't understand danger.
Right.
Just like your mates, they're, the last thing you want to do is, hey, be in a gunfight and not be there. And that was, I think that all stems from, kind of that 2005 time period is, I don't want to be in a situation where I can't be there or something happens. Do you realize, that, you always can't be there and stuff like that? Yeah. Because you got buddies around and different teams out doing different things, and you can't be, the protector all the time. But it's like, man, it's one of those. It's almost like a drug, because you got to sit there and you're part of this team, man, and you're gonna protect them. So
yeah, it's funny, even with not just special operations but other jobs, people trying to find that balance, of like, you want to do a good job, obviously if you're in the teams and you're part of a unit like that, it's like you want to be there for your brothers. There's a huge camaraderie there. Yep. and a love and a bond, and,
absolutely,
and a sense of loyalty and commitment. And but you have a family at home, that's waiting for you.
Well,
and it's trying to find that balance,
Unfortunately, I'm gonna tell you the balance. The balance is they lose out. The family does.
Right.
Even you look at pretty much special operations community. Is it the way we're wired? Is it the way we think? Is it the way whatever? I don't know, but I would say probably almost to a T. Everyone's putting the community in front of the family.
Right.
So I think that's just the way that, you're with these guys. There's such a camaraderie. There's such a bond.
Yeah.
You kind of, go from there. But, on the whole family side, I mean, the bonus is I walked away out of the military being married for 24 years.
You're defying the odds, that's for sure. You know what I mean? Because that's not the norm.
No.
You know what I mean? And
Nope.
I think if I was in your shoes, I would probably have such a huge amount of respect for my wife. You know what I mean? I mean, I do anyway for my wife, but I'm saying in your shoes, it's like, wow.
Yeah.
Because that's not the norm of like a woman that's going to hold it down for you and raise your kids and let you do your job,
Yeah.
you know, virtually stress-free, you know, as far as like having to deal with things at home.
Totally. And I mean, you know, we worked through stuff over the years, but you know, to sit there at any certain point, because it happened to buddies of mine, you know, they would come home and their ex-wife had cleaned the house out.
Yep.
I had one guy, I mean, she pulled the nails out of the wall. I mean, he walked in to basically his clothes hanging in the closet and nothing else.
Yeah.
You know, God bless my wife, man. She is a phenomenal woman. I think our bullheadedness combined was a lot what, you know, helped with us. But yeah, she stuck through thick and thin. And like I said, I did her wrong, straight up.
Yeah.
You know, there were times I should have came home.
Yep.
And I didn't, you know, so, but you know, the beauty is now she's, you know, my partner in crime. She's part of War Hogg Tactical. I try to bring her along as much as I can and try to go, hey, I appreciate, you know, what you did for me. So now it's kind of my time to.
How was that adjustment for you coming back? You know, because it's like, I see that a lot with like my buddies, you know, who are older than me, you know, that are retiring from law enforcement or just retiring from whatever, you know, whether it be military or outside the military. And now they're spending all this time with their wives that they're not used to spending. So it's like, you see like there's a lot more tension in the relationship now, you know, more than ever, you know?
You know, I don't know that we have any more tension in the relationship. It's just, the adjustment is when you're trying to run, you know, kind of like a home-based business.
Yeah.
The touch is right there. Mama's right there. Hey, can we do this? Hey, can we do that? Hey, let me do a phone call. Let me get this email out. Let me do this, you know. Hey, you're always on your phone. You're doing your Instagram, you know, and trying to get that. Yes, I'm retired.
Yeah.
As my dad likes to say, semi-retired.
Right.
That's his famous quote. I'm semi-retired. But, you know, the adjustment kind of transition from the military, you got to think that while you're in, I've got range, I've got bullets, I've got my, you know, my place I'm going to for lunch, you know, I've got my friends, I've got, you know, my strength coaches, my gym, my physical therapist, all that stuff right there.
Yeah.
Easy touch. So I have it one day, I step out the next, rug's pulled out, and it's almost like starting all over again.
Oh, for sure.
So where's my new doc at, and how competent is he? Because I've got a relationship set up with this one over here, and you know, working all that stuff. But it's definitely a good place to be. However, the Army, at least for the entrepreneurial side, doesn't set guys up for success.
Yeah.
You know, I did the boost to business class and all these other classes they offer. So, yep. You know, that, like I said, going back from childhood and my dad and all his businesses, I think that entrepreneurial spirit, I really think the entrepreneurial spirit is in pretty much everyone coming out of the military. Because really you can be your own boss, run your own stuff, and go do what you want to do. So I'm not in the firearms industry because that was my job in the military. That's what I enjoy to do. Yeah. I mean, I enjoyed it when I was in the military. Don't get me wrong. I enjoyed it as a civilian as well.
So why don't you explain that a little bit? You started War Hogg Tactical, and what exactly is War Hogg Tactical, and what are you doing with it?
So War Hogg Tactical is a mobile firearms tactical and canine training company. So I take pretty much my combat experience, and I'm using that into, you know, the classes I'm teaching. So I'm not one, I can do set classes, but I kind of look at, depending, especially for like my male LE guys, I try to do customized stuff. So versus just going, hey, we're going to shoot, you know, whatever we're doing, try to customize it to their needs. I don't need to focus on your strengths. I need your weaknesses. How can I make you better? Yeah. So that's kind of the focus there. We're also getting ready to launch a canine product line. So again, what does Joe know about U.S. manufacturing, we figure it out.
Yeah.
So hopefully, if all goes well, we should have our K9 product line launch in around February timeframe. But it goes into, you got to have an e-commerce website, right? What do we know about that? So it's all these learning things, from the entrepreneurial side. And that's really the building block of War Hogg Tactical. So it's, how do you get the name out there? How do you market so that people know, hey, here's what I'm doing. Here's kind of the services I can offer.
Yeah.
And trying to figure out all these mediums and platforms and again, word of mouth and doing things like the podcast. But, so it's been good because I've had people reach out. So we've got a couple collabs going on around the country, go out to other people's places and do stuff like that. So it's slowly getting out there, slowly getting the word out there. And,
super cool. You think you're gonna stay geared more toward law enforcement and military, or would you prefer to go more toward the civilian sector in terms of like training? I'm
good with both because I think they both need it. There's both, there's needs on both sides.
Absolutely.
So definitely, the mil LE guys. Yep. And there's certain applications, especially, I can talk a certain way to my mil guys. Your LE guys, you got to be, with this day and age, a little careful as far as, you got to give them a little more, hey, how to pick things up, how to read things, because these guys are so scrutinized. I mean, everything crazy. They do is just under the microscope. Yep. So trying to help them get that mindset and kind of read the playing field. So if you want to say, going back to the PTSD, the hypervigilance, they've got to be. Yep. They've got to be reading all this stuff because these guys are walking around with bullseyes on their back. So how do you train them to do that? And you got to incorporate certain things out in the range that's causing them to be vigilant, causing them to look. Yeah. And hopefully, try to talk them to, hey guys, you're a walking target. Yep. I mean, it is not a good day and age to be law enforcement in the U.S.
Not at all, man. It's terrible. I mean, like just the way that the ability or inability to do their jobs, because anything you do, like I said, is scrutinized. They have from the body cameras to everyone that has a damn cell phone with a camera on it. The minute the cop pulls someone over, it's like, let me get our camera out and start videotaping this and whatever. And it's like, I think there's just a lack of respect too. The respect is completely gone. Yep. And so, you got guys that are getting into situations where they're worried about their pension. They're worried about internal affairs. They're worried about all these other issues when they should be worried about getting home to their families.
Exactly.
And being safe.
Yep.
And it's, their hands are kind of tied. You know what I mean? Like, so that split second decision where it's like a matter of life and death, there's too many things going against you to it makes it very difficult to make a reasonable, rational decision, you know? I just definitely, I don't envy that position at all, man. No. I have a definite high amount of respect for it. I don't envy it because it's just not a good place to be right now.
No, it's not.
Unfortunately.
And then trying to, help these guys get that mental, it's hard. How do you break through these barricades? Because you got, you want to give a guy, some mental toughness, but really in the back of his mind, he's got, well, I'm going to get scrutinized for this. I can't, draw my pistol from my holster unless it meets X, Y, and Z. Right. How many times do you see on TV, hey, drop the knife, and they're not shooting guys? Because I got it. That's just kind of the things that have driven him to go that way. But at the same token, you got to do the same thing on the civilian side. You've got to get, your civilian gun owners, you got to get them proper training as well.
Yeah,
so
that's the problem, though. I think is you get the media, number one, that's usually biased. You know what I mean? So like, is there police brutality and things out there that cops are doing that are bad? Sure, there are. Yeah. Is that the norm though? No, absolutely not. No. You know what I mean? If you did like statistically, it's like, no, statistically, most cops are good. Yeah. Most cops are out there because they care about their community. You know what I mean? And it's like, that's not the norm, but that's what's being sensationalized on the media, is that there's all this police brutality and it's horrible and it's terrible. And although it is terrible, it's not the norm though, No. And the same thing with civilians, like they need to get trained up too, because a lot of people are thinking like, okay, cool, I'll get a gun, I'll own a gun, or I'll have a CCW or whatever. I'll take the little bullshit class they make me take for the CCW. And it's like, when I'm at the range and I see people next to me, I don't say that I'm a good shot, a great shot, or whatever. I'm learning. I will be, because it's like, this is the thing, dude. I'm training because I want to be as proficient as possible. But you see some of these people that are carrying weapons shooting next to me. I'm like, oh shit.
Yeah.
You know, like that's scary, man.
But see, Josh, you hit a good point, because the thing is, everyone thinks that the range is the only place to train.
Right.
And nobody's out there, you talk to some of these civilian guys, they have no idea what dry fire is. Or
Right.
there's this misconception, well, if I dry fire, I'm going to wreck my gun. Short of your 22 caliber, rim fire, you're going to be fine.
Yeah.
There's no dramas.
Yeah.
But get them some good, solid, foundational skills.
Where did that start, actually? This whole, because I know, when I first heard that term, dry firing, that was the first thing that popped into my head when I first heard it, was like, oh shit, I'm going to ruin my weapon by, dry firing my weapon over and over. No, you're not going to ruin your weapon, So, I don't know where that misinformation started, because I know when I heard it, I was like, what?
Yeah.
And then now that I know what, no, you're good. It's one of those things around the house, you know what I mean? Use your TV. There's targets all around your house. You can be dry firing. And the more you dry fire, the better shot you're going to be,
Well, yeah. I mean, and there's things you can even train yourself by not even using your weapon. So just a simple, if you stick your finger out there and do an eye focus exercise. So that's something I have to do, because a part of my, eye convergence, for my TBI stuff is I've got to train my eyes as well. Yeah. So I can sit there, and of course Mama knows when I'm doing it, because my, basically index finger goes out there, right. And she knows I'm changing my focal point, from basically my fingertip, which would replicate, a front sight post out to a far target, and you just going back and forth, and you're just changing that focal plane. Yeah. I mean, there's all kinds of things, but the problem is nobody. I look at a lot of shooters that come out. There's no plan for when they go out. They don't need to. You don't need to take 1,000 rounds out to the range with no purpose and just shoot 1,000 bullets. What are you getting?
Right.
Nothing. So I recommend to guys, all my students going through classes, hey, get you a notebook. Write down, what your plan is. What's your dry fire session going to look like? I don't need to spend 30 hours, dry fire. You pick, if you were to take a shooter and go, hey, dedicate to me 5 minutes, 3 days a week, go out to the range on the weekend, you're going to see improvement.
Big time.
But you got to have a plan. You got to know what you're doing. So, for your concealed carry guys, hey, practice drawing. Oh, yeah. What garments you wearing, how you, all these different things.
Yeah. And get your kids involved too. That's the other thing that's big for me. I have a 12-year-old, 4-year-old, 2-year-old, and a newborn, all boys. But my 12-year-old, he loves shooting. Yeah. And that's the thing, is that I don't ever want to. I didn't grow up shooting, I mean, I shot a couple times when I was younger, but I think that will be a part of our family. It will be part of our culture and our traditions. Totally. We'll all shoot, we'll all be shooters, and we'll be proficient and comfortable around firearms. It's just, it is what it is. So
one thing I did with my kids, I remember having a dummy pistol. Yeah. And again, I taught my kids, hey, at a very early age, 5, 6-year-old, we're introducing, firearm safety fundamentals, all that stuff. Yep. And I would purposely have that dummy pistol laying around, and the kids would come up to me, hey, Daddy, your pistol's sitting on the coffee table. And again, a 5 or 6-year-old doesn't realize it's not real. They weren't touching it. They weren't bringing it to me. They were letting me know the way we taught them, hey, if you see it, let me know. Yep. Don't touch it. And I think a lot of people try to hide firearms from kids. No, educate them. Yep. Do it properly. Did we go out and shoot, 9mm 5.56 right off the bat? No way. We're shooting BB guns. Start them young, teach them the fundamentals, moving up to 22s. I can remember, my daughter's I think 12 or 13-year-old. Man, we ended up shooting my 1911. It was kind of, remember, was it getting close to night, little cool. She felt the heat off the flash, saw the flash, she was like, oh, this is the coolest thing ever,
It sucked.
Yeah. But
my son actually traded, I have Glocks, but we went to the range last week, and he shot a 1911. He's like, no, I like this one better. I'm like, oh, dick. now I know what I'm getting him for his birthday.
Yeah. But, so it's taking all that stuff and really, kind of the whole backstory, jumping forward to where we're sitting at with, War Hogg Tactical today, is I was very blessed to have super people in my path, along the way. Were some pains in the ass on the path as well. Of course. That's life. Yeah. But, you draw off of that, and then in turn it's I think it's collectively, how can we as a veteran community help each other? The information's out there.
Yeah.
How can I help? Hey, the next guy, whether it's, use this website, try this. This is what's working for me on social media. I mean, it's how do I promote you? How do you promote me? It's all working together, because it just seems like forces that control these platforms, they're not the friendliest to us.
Right.
So if we can collectively help each other, I
think it's huge. I think cross-pollination and getting together and taking care of one another is like, it's huge, because there's a lot of things that I've learned along the way, and I'm more than willing to share whatever I've learned, with my brothers and sisters out there. They're like, hey, if I can help you, like, get over some of the growing pains, investments that I've made that were terrible, like was not a good investment, but I didn't know any better. So it's like, hey, I've learned along the way. I'm sure you have as well, like different mistakes that you've made, whether it be a website host or whatever. And it's like, damn it, I should have gone this way.
Exactly. But it also goes, it's on the entrepreneurial side as well, but it's also just on, the medical side too, and it's looking at the guys out there and say, hey man, don't let the VA pump you full of a whole bunch of pills.
Yeah.
Check it out. There's a whole bunch of holistic things out there, and helping people on that whole realm.
That's my biggest message, I think, like number one for me. And that's why I started this whole podcast, actually, was that, I had my last back surgery. I did it without the use of any drugs. And, in the hospital, I had the drugs they gave me, but when I left the hospital, I was like, I'm not taking any pain pills. And I did it because I was part of that culture. I was part of the whole VA, go to the VA and get all your candy, And so at any given time, like, morphine, methadone, fentanyl, Oxycontin, Xanax, Klonopin, Ambien. You name it, I was taking all of it, Adderall. And I quit all of it cold turkey. And I quit it all cold turkey, but I'm not recommending anybody do that, by the way. It was just what worked for me.
Yeah.
And, but starting this podcast was a way for me to share that message of like, there's so many other things out there that you could be doing instead of just getting pumped full of drugs, getting a label slapped on you, and then you take a bunch of drugs. And I think that message needs to get out there and definitely in the veteran community, because it's not people that just drug seeking behavior. A lot of it is just ignorance.
Yeah.
You just don't know any better.
Nope.
You know what I mean? And you're part of the system, and you get in the system, and next thing you know, you're in this drug induced fog, and you don't even realize it while you're in it.
Well, and 9 times out of 10, you're probably rolling into there. So like I said, the whole punch drunk fog, where, the thing was for me, I told these guys, I don't want your pills.
Right.
But what do they still do? They still try to push them to you.
Yep.
And it's like, there's other ways out there. And again, is it trial and error? Yep. Does acupuncture work? Helped me out. Does it work for everybody? I don't know. Yep. Dry needling worked for me. Does it work for everybody? I don't know. Right. Traction. There's so many options out there that give it a shake. And think about it. Guys are resilient, but it's just the easy, hey, do this and roll out.
It's a quick fix. And I think that's the, I'm not going to say even the veteran community, just in general, I think people just want a quick fix at the end of the day. And that's what I try to tell people is like, I'm not telling you that it's okay to feel like shit. No one wants to feel like shit. No, everyone wants to feel good. You know, like that's the goal of life, is to be optimal and be vital and just have have a sense of well-being. But there's other ways of doing it besides going to a doctor to get pills. And that was the other thing that I had to learn the hard way, was that I put a lot of faith in medical doctors. And even with stuff like, with diet and nutrition, it's like you look at like medical school, it's like how many hours if they're not a dietitian, they're just a medical doctor, how many hours do they spend on nutrition? Like 4, maybe 8 hours on nutrition, their entire medical school. It's like, why am I going to them for nutritional advice?
Sure.
That's silly. It doesn't even make sense. No. And so this is all like you said, it's like I've learned things along the way, and I would love to share them with people, what's worked for me.
Yeah.
I'm not claiming to be the smartest person in the world, because I'm definitely not, but there are some things that I learned. Hopefully if it helped me, it can potentially help you. I'm not saying that it will, but hopefully it does,
At least give it a try. And I think that's the biggest thing. So like the dry needling, for example, if I know in North Carolina, a PT can do it.
Yeah.
I know if you're down in Florida, an acupuncturist has to do it.
Right.
So granted, you got to work around some state laws and stuff like that, but at the end of the day, man, try stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, and that's the biggest thing. And
so where do you see? I don't want to go down the rabbit hole too much because I could talk forever. I wanted this to be more about kind of what you're doing and what you're up to. So where do you see War Hogg Tactical going in the next year or two?
Where I see us growing or see us going is growing. There we go.
Yeah, for sure.
So again, each year seems to be a little bit more growth, so we're getting more classes on the calendar, and that's really what I'm kind of focused towards. But at the same token, I want to start pushing the product line as well. So really, I see us branching out. I don't know. We're running out as far as Utah, but that kind of, you start rolling out that way.
Yeah.
You start getting some long legs in there and stuff, but I'm not opposed to it. The product lines will get to grow. Mama's going to help me as far as doing the backside of the business and stuff. But again, I still want to drag her along with me and being the one-man show. Yeah. It's a hard road. So
you thought about doing any like training, certifications where it's like you can train another trainer to kind of grow your business that way, where it's like you get a couple guys that you vet them and they're good to go, and you bring them on board as like War Hogg Tactical trainers. So you're not just running everything on your own. So not so much looking at War Hogg Tactical trainers. What I would like is, or kind of what we're in the talks of doing, is kind of like a associate instructor program. Yeah.
So how can we pair with other people? How can we work with other guys? And how do we, again, it goes back to that versus me just going, all right, hey, Josh, yep, I've trained you in Hamas Damas, you're good to go. How can Josh, where Josh lives at, and how can me where I'm at, how can we harness our powers together?
Right.
And
so you're pulling from both.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So I'm not so much looking to build a stable of cadre. I'd say I'd rather build, kind of a stable of associates out there, and then we all kind of help each other that way.
Where can people find you? What's the best way for people to connect with you?
They can connect one of two ways. They can either hit me on Instagram at War Hogg Tactical, or they can go to my website, which is warhogg2gs.com.
Oh, nice, dude.
Yeah. So it's warhogg.com. So draw for that is obviously my last name has 2 G's. So
yeah, for sure. That's awesome. I like that. The other thing I want to ask you, everyone that comes on the podcast, I ask them 2 questions. Mm-hmm. First one being, if you had one person that inspired you the most your entire life, it could be a person, it could be a book, it could be a quote, it could be whatever, that inspired you the most in your life, whether it be your military life, your family life, it doesn't really matter. Just what was the biggest inspiration to you and why?
Probably my biggest inspiration really would be my wife, because she's really the one. She is the cornerstone of the Hogg House. She raised the kids. I wasn't there. She kept the house together. Things are breaking when I'm gone. She's taking care of all that. So really, she would be the one. I mean, awesome. She is a rock solid woman.
It's good to go, man. I like that. Second question is, if you had one regret in your life, the biggest regret that you have, what would it be and why? And the reason I ask that is because, not in a way to be a downer at all. Mm-hmm. It's more like, I know people listen to this podcast. I know people are going to hear this. And for me, I love takeaways, so like for me, I will go back and I listen to all of my podcasts over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. Because there's takeaways that I hear each time I listen to them. And one thing that I've done over the last couple of years is I've started asking people that are way older than me, mm-hmm. like my wife's grandmother. I asked my grandmother before she died, what were some of her regrets? Yeah. It's a way for me to learn, a way for me to be like, okay, if I can avoid making that same mistake, I'll do my best.
Yeah.
So what would that be for you?
Really goes back to to the burden I put on the family.
Yeah.
But then again, it's a double-edged sword, because I sit there and go, I'd repeat it. So but how could I have harnessed maybe my time with them better? How could I have done something better? How could I have...
Would you tell another soldier if they were coming in to the same kind of career field that you were in, same trajectory, same everything, with the same set of circumstances, like same family life? How would you tell them that they could potentially do it differently to be better off?
I would say ensure you have a good communication base with your wife. And like I said, it took me from up until 2011 for her to tell me, you don't get it. Way too long. We could have probably rectified a lot of things. So I would say biggest takeaway, whether you're newly married or been married for a couple of years and you're in the community, make sure you guys are communicating. Have that clear, hey, be honest with each other. Don't sit there and beat around the bush. Could I have sat there and told my wife, hey babe, check it out, I can't come home. She's not going to understand. But could I have gone, hey, you don't understand the importance of these guys. I've got to be here for them. But then that makes her feel second class. So you're doing this almost constant battle, lie, if you want to say, but establish the communication up front. Don't bullshit, or don't, make sure the dialogue's both ways. So that would be my biggest takeaway for somebody rolling in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I dig it, man.
Yeah, buddy.
Well, I seriously appreciate you coming on and doing this podcast with me.
Yeah.
You shared some heavy stuff. You're choking me up, man, sharing your story, because I think it hits home, because I was in the military, and I still have a lot of buddies that are either active duty or that were veterans together. And you can relate with it a little bit, like you're like, wow, and then I realize, even, like I said, even outside of the military, when you're putting things before your family, you got to really question, like, is this me being selfish and my own self-interest? I mean, you can code it or paint it however you want, like, hey, I'm trying to do something for my family. At the end of the day, you got to make sure they're taken care of first. Home base is taken care of first,
Absolutely.
And luckily I was blessed with an amazing wife that allows me to travel and do my thing while she takes care of our kids and holds it down for me, so I'm fortunate in that way. But at the same time, like, that honest communication, you got to be, don't, if that's the biggest takeaway, Josh, it's like, for you, the viewers, man, or listeners, excuse me, it's like, be honest. Yeah. And is it going to hurt sometimes? Yeah, it is. Yeah. That's okay. 'Cause you work through it, you build through it, but don't sugarcoat stuff. Don't tell her things that you think she wants to hear. Be honest. Yeah. And that's what's going to make things go. It's pretty cool, because it's been a learn for me, growing up, you kind of get an idea of what you think a man should be, or a husband should be, or a father should be, based on the examples that you've had around you.
Yeah.
I'd say over the last 3 years, I've really come to terms with the fact that, my wife is definitely my ride or die. She's definitely the woman that I'll share everything with.
Sure.
You know what I mean? I'll like my deepest, most horrible insecurities or whatever the case may be. And I used to think that was a sign of weakness to show those insecurities. But now I'm coming to terms with the fact that there's great strength in being vulnerable.
There is.
Being honest.
There is. And I'll say this. I didn't get vulnerable until I was almost ready to get out. And that was part of my healing process.
Oh, yeah.
So when you compartmentalize that stuff for so long, it's not a good place to be either. Yeah. It's not good to keep all that crap in there. So it's even here, I mean, whether the listeners pick up of, stuff in the voice, there's certain things that still bother me.
Yeah, for sure.
We're still working through it. That's okay.
Yeah.
But each day, thank God that you're alive. Yeah. Sit there and go, hey, what am I going to do, to the max of my ability? And it's all good.
Yeah, man. Like I said, man, I really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, buddy.
If there's anything that I can do to promote War Hogg Tactical, if there's anything I can do on, in California, as we know, it's a tough market, for the old gun industry. But
so I'm starting a slingshots course specifically for California. So,
no, man, there's a lot of people out there that are thirsty for knowledge. You know what I mean? And so if there's anything that I can do to promote it, to link up with you, I know a couple guys that have some ranges that we can do classes at, whatever. I'm more than willing to do that.
Yeah, buddy.
And thanks
same,
again, man.
Yeah, man. Same thing for the listeners, man. If they want to reach out, hit me on, like I said, either Instagram or my website. Shoot me an email. And if you got a range, you got some guys you want to put a class together, I got no problem coming wherever. I got a gun case. Jump on a plane and go.
Let's do it.
Yeah, buddy.
All right, brother. We'll talk to you.
All right, thanks, Josh.
Thank you for listening to My Backstory. Stay motivated and stay connected off the show. Follow at my_backstory_ to be a part of the journey to recovery and to see where your story goes. Or visit us online at hereismybackstory.com.